I'm really excited about this to talk about the new variable speed water to water from Intertech. We internally call this the Rev J. And, a lot of you may know that we brought out a variable speed water to water unit back in 2017. We have learned a tremendous amount from the last several years in direct to load piping, variable speed hydronic heat pump technology. And we have applied a tremendous amount of what we've learned into this new unit. This is something that I work pretty closely with, so I'm very excited to have everybody check this out. So, what we've got here is a unit that is more accessible for all mechanical rooms. It is a true variable speed hydronic unit, and it's variable in every way. It's a variable output system, a fully variable inverter driven Copeland scroll compressor. This unit does feature stainless steel plate style heat exchangers. This new model has a full 5.5-inch color touchscreen unit that is on the front of the uh, box itself. It features built-in Wi-Fi with an Ethernet port, so you can hardwire connect this unit. Um, it does offer our Intertech Epic controls and the MyUplink and MyUplink Pro app and web interfaces, which we'll go into a little bit later on. And we are offering two different versions of this unit. We have a built-in 9 kW electric backup heater, or there's a dual fuel option, which we'll be talking quite a bit about. To my knowledge, this is the first hydronic geothermal unit that offers true dual fuel compatibility. And so I'm pretty excited to show that off. It's really cool. You can do up to 100% of domestic hot water with this unit. We do have the ability to cascade multiple of these units together, and we'll get into that and how that works. And this unit does feature A2L refrigerant. We are using 454B, and it is below the mitigation level, so there is no refrigerant detection system required. This is what the new RevJ WV looks like. It is being offered under the Intertech brand alone. So historically, we've had multiple different brands and colorways. This is the colors and brand that we decided to roll with for this new product. Now we've had several of these units out in various field tests for quite a bit long time, and a few of them do exist with some different paint colors. So if you've seen some pictures that may have some different colors and stuff, we were testing things out. But this is the release version right here. And as you can see, hopefully you guys can see my mouse dot moving around on the screen. But as you can see here, we have multiple knockouts here for electrical on both the right and left side, as well as across the back, which you'll see as I move forward here. This is the color touchscreen interface. And in my opinion, I think it's a pretty good looking unit. Hopefully you guys do as well. Uh, so this unit features a lot of kind of new upgraded things and what we've learned across this time. Um, this unit is incredibly easy to install as far as hydronic systems go and the way that we've done things historically. Having the ports aligned the way they are lines up with the previous generation of this model, but it offers really good flexibility for piping this unit. The built-in load pump, which is a Grundfos UPM XL, if you are familiar with their nomenclature, it's a 25-124 pump. And we do have an optional second load pump kit available if that's required. But having the knockouts for electrical to come into the unit on the right, left, or the back of the unit makes for really nice, clean installs, and just opens up a lot of flexibility to make this unit fit in all situations. Um, we allow this unit because of the pipe layout across the back. You can pipe to up, down, left, right pretty easily, but it makes for really clean installations. This is the first unit of its kind to have a top-mounted electrical panel, which I'll show you. So the way the unit will ship, the electronics are mounted up in the top of the unit, and the top lid of the unit comes off very easily to allow easy access to this. But it can be moved to the front of the unit if you were going to stack multiples of these in like a rack style system. So this is just a real quick picture of this is one of the field test units that we have out there. This is one of our contractors up in the Northeast, and for a heat pump that's doing multiple zones of hydronic air handler plus radiant, and in this particular case, a hydronic towel warmer, as well as doing domestic hot water. And this one also has a backup boiler, which you can't really see in this picture, but you can see here it with all the piping, all the wiring coming into the back of the unit. It just makes for really, really clean installs. This is kind of in a shop setting, so this isn't a residential mechanical room, but it's a good illustration of really beautiful work and how cleanly this thing can be installed. This is another install here. This is again a dual fuel unit, and that is a modulating Viessmann boiler sitting next to this unit, and we'll get into how we control the boiler and stuff. But as you can see, uh, it's kind of a pretty big departure from what historically has been, hydronics based mechanical rooms. So as we get in here, we're going to talk about some new stuff. Um, Across the back of the unit. So this is on the production line. These are actually pictures from pilot units being built. You can see here, these were getting ready for run tests. And so we have the 5 ports across the back. These 2 lower ports in the bottom left, that is the supply and return for the ground loop. And then the center port here is the common return for the load side, and then the next port up is the load out, and the very top port is the domestic hot water out. And then people that are familiar with our original variable speed water to water will notice that there are 2 more ports right down here. Those ports, if ordered in the dual fuel configuration, these 2 ports will have plugs in them. But this is where you hook supply and return from the boiler. So we're actually piping the boiler directly to the back of the heat pump. And then the boiler can back up space heating as well as domestic hot water. You can see here, I mentioned the electrical knockouts across the top for the backside of the unit. And then this right here is the intake grill for the inverter cooling fan. And this dark colored piece that's over that is actually a magnetic air filter that's accessible from the backside of the unit, and it's a washable style, like a screen style filter. So real easy to maintain and can just be removed and cleaned as needed. And we've built a lot of stuff into this unit. So we have a built-in startup wizard, and these are just a few of the screen pictures from that unit. Um, and I don't really have enough time here to go through all of them. But I just wanted to show a little bit of, what you can expect the first time you power this unit up. I get the calls quite often. People want to fill and flush the machine before powering it up. And we actually want you to power the unit up because the screen will walk you through the filling and flushing steps, and the motorized ball valves that are internal to the machine. You can operate them right from the screen. And so it won't allow any of the pumps to run or anything like that. It actually has this all built in, and it'll just kind of walk you through step by step. And so it'll tell you, before we actually fire up a pump, it's going to give you a warning and say, hey, are you confident that you have fluid in there? Uh, and make sure that you do before you hit confirm, move to the next step. And then it's going to show you, the source flow rate or the load flow rate or domestic hot water, whatever function it's in. It's going to show you live GPM readings on the screen. It's going to go through a flow test. If it fails the flow test, it's going to tell you, hey, there's still air in the system. You need to do some more flushing. And then you can rerun the test. And then once the test is passed, you can move on to the next step. It works incredibly well. We've had great success with it, and we've just taken this further with this new unit and its new capabilities. So the startup wizard is a really good feature. Um, I can see that we have multiple different questions coming in here. So real quick, I'm going to address a couple of these. So I've been asked, is it mostly on the back or the sides as well? I don't know. I don't understand, I guess, that question. What clearances are needed for this unit? Um, I don't know if I don't have the exact dimensions off the top of my head. I'm wanting to say that the footprint of this unit is around like 24 by 26 inches, something like that. Uh, but we will certainly have more of that dimensional data and stuff like that coming up on our website here very soon. And then Steve asked, could you pipe solar storage tank into those two bottom ports? Um, I mean, depending on what the temperature of the water is, I guess there's a lot of things that you could do. Um, so yeah, I mean, without knowing a lot more information about that question, Steve, I don't really have an answer for you. It would really just depend on, how many BTUs you have available and what the temp of that water would be. So, all right, move on here a little bit. Again, like the photos that I just showed you, I wanted to give just a little bit of what you can kind of expect on this screen. So there's a tremendous amount of information that's available on this screen. And again, I just don't have enough time to show you every screen and every option and all those things. But this is just a small kind of sample of what's on there. And so in the home setting, so the blue screens are all like space conditioning screens, and the orange screens are hot water mode. And so you can see things like compressor speeds, the target supply, whatever we're shooting for at that moment. We can see what the superheat is. And then we can see what the load supply water temperature, and then we can see more things like discharge pressure and suction pressure, condensing temperatures and evaporation temps, uh, actual temperatures of the, suction line and discharge. And of course, all the information about the load and source water flows, uh, supply and return temps and gallons per minute and pump speeds and all that sort of information. All this stuff is readily available on the screen, and it's in real time. So it really kind of eliminates the need for any sort of diagnostic tools. Really, the only reason to ever hook any diagnostic tools to this is to verify that you have a bad sensor of some, whether it be a thermistor or a pressure transducer. And then we also show information like the valve position down here. Are we in the home mode for space conditioning, or are we doing domestic hot water? And then if we have electric heat stages, which the 9 kW is broke up into three 3 kW stages, or are we running the backup boiler? And then what the actual temperatures are of our load and source coils. And then just like we have for these home screens, we have multiple hot water screens as well. So you can see a lot of this information in all of these modes. Uh, it just opens up to really easy access to get all this information, and it's just right there at your fingertips. So as we get into some of the functionality of this equipment, I showed a little bit about the boiler ports on the backside of the heat pump. Um, these are the two different field wiring connection boards, and I wanted to highlight this for a handful of reasons. Um, these two units here share the same boards essentially from this area all the way over. So all of the ports to the right of the board are exactly the same. And so if we start from the right hand side, we have a heat call, and then we have a high heat call. And this is true on both the dual fuel and on the electric backup unit. The difference here is that the heat call looks at outdoor reset temperature, and the high heat call is just a fixed set point temperature, which you select. And so most of the time, the heat call would be used for things like radiant floor heat, and the high heat call would generally be used for things like fan coils or air handlers or something of that nature, baseboard radiators. Uh, but these are just dry contacts. So we're just looking to make dry contact here across either the two heat terminals or the high heat, and it'll put the system in that mode. We have a cool call, which is a fixed set point temperature. And then the DHW call here, this is actually where you would hook up a thermistor. So the touchscreen on the unit is the aquastat for the DHW. And then moving over, we have R and C, which is just 24 volts out of this unit. And then we also have a place here for an outdoor air temperature sensor. You have the option on this unit to either have a wired sensor or use internet weather data based off zip code. And then this here really isn't used in this particular unit at this point in time. And then we have this small plug over here. So this board on the top, this is for the electric backup version of this unit. And it's probably kind of hard to see on the screen here, but what this little green connector is labeled as M in, and what that is for a modulating signal input. And this is where you would hook up a third-party control to cascade these heat pumps. So we can receive a 0 to 10 signal from a third-party control, something like an HBX Eco 600 or a Tecmar control. There are various controls on the market, but we can receive a 0 to 10 signal into this port to cascade multiple of these units together. And it will, kick on the backup as needed, uh, whether it's electric backup. And then when we get down here to the dual fuel board, like I said, all these ports starting on the right, moving all the way over, all of those are exactly the same. The calls are the same, dry contacts, but you can see over here that this green connector is different. We still have the modulating in, so we can still receive that 0 to 10 signal from an external controller. However, right next to it now we have a modulating out port, and then the last two here on the far left are TT, and that's just a common dry contact right there. And so the TT can be used in multiple different ways. Some boilers require like a dry contact or a 24-volt signal for a boiler enable, and then use a 0 to 10 or a 2 to 10 VDC signal to modulate the boiler. Some boilers only require the modulating signal. So we have both options available. So on this dual fuel board, we are actually controlling the boiler to assist the heat pump, whether it be for space heating or for domestic hot water needs. You can set those up differently in the screen. So you could be, really aggressive for domestic hot water on the backup, whether it be electric or dual fuel, or you could make it, more aggressive in the space heating mode or vice versa. So there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of options here. And having, both options available to have a standard TT dry contact output or this modulating output really kind of just opens up the door to a lot of possibilities. Uh, John, do you have any input here for piping a boiler straight to the back of a geothermal heat pump and modulating the boiler?
Well, definitely integrating that piping into the back of the boiler is a first as far as I know, and it does make for a nice clean install. Uh, and the other thing that I believe is a first and maybe unique in the industry is that modulating output. So instead of just turning on a ModCon boiler, just turning it on and off, excuse me, you're actually able to dial in how much supplemental heat you need from that boiler. So it really works well in concert with the variable speed pump and the variable speed compressor and heat pump.
Yeah. So one of the questions that came up here, Mike Mike Johnson asked, when doing dual fuel, is the boiler pipe straight in or is it a primary, secondary piping still needed? And the answer to that question really is that the boiler is piped straight into the back of the unit. And what's happening inside of our unit is that is the primary loop.
Mhm.
So one thing I didn't talk about when I was showing the ports on the back of the piece of equipment is there are motorized ball valves on each of the boiler ports. And so we can ensure that we have shut off all water flow so we never have the run the risk of running any sort of chilled water through the boiler or having any sort of temperature migration and then have pipes sweating and that kind of stuff. So we've actually put modular motorized ball valves inside the unit on both boiler ports that are only active, of course, when we're calling for the boiler. The one caveat here is that you do need some type of system pump for the boiler. And most ModCon boilers today, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of ModCon boilers today have a system pump built in. But potentially you may need to add, whether it's a 009 or a 1558 or something, some small circulator to just handle that circuit from the boiler to our heat pump. Um, yeah, like John was saying, I don't know of any other hydronic heat pump on the market that is this well integrated with dual fuel. Um, you know, having the motorized ball valves built in, having all the piping built in to where you literally are just hooking up the boiler straight up to the back of the unit.
Mhm.
Um, it it decreases your install cost considerably when it comes to having, backup boilers and you know, John, your experience with this, I know you have a ton of experience in this field when it comes to dual fuel systems. uh, systems can get quite extensive when you're talking about trying to do boiler backups as far as the install cost and the space that it burns up, whether
Yeah. Yeah. A typical install, we've seen a lot of them where you've got a separate circulator for the boiler and you have to have some type of hydraulic separation between that circuit, the circulator and the boiler and the balance of the system. And with this design, you've built that hydraulic separation right into the unit. So, as you were saying, it makes for very clean. I'm thinking heat pump sitting there on a pad, maybe comes up maybe 3 feet, put the ModCon boiler right above it, and as you're pointing out, just run the 2 pipes from the boiler right down along the wall and then do 290s and go right into the back of the heat pump. So, it's about as clean as you can get.
yeah. Yeah, and from a controls perspective here, having this be a function inside the heat pump where you're sending out the modulating signal, there's no external control that's needed. Um, and you have full control over the settings on that boiler or how aggressively or not that you want to run the backup. It's kind of a game changer. We carry over a lot of this same functionality with our air to water system,
Mhm.
and uh, of course the electric backup has all the same settings available to where you can adjust the how aggressive the electric backup is. Uh, Obviously, with the boiler, you can get a little more capacity out of it than 9 kW, depending on size of boiler and size of piping and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like this is a pretty big shift in the world of hydronic heat pumps and just makes that so much nicer and easier to incorporate a dual fuel system, which I happen to be a big fan of. That it just opens up for a lot of possibilities and a lot of flexibility when it comes to size of projects and type of zones and all hitting all the requirements that building owners or homeowners are looking for.
Yeah, and too, that, points that are really good about dual fuel looking forward when you get into things like off-peak, on-peak electrical rates, there may be times when the boiler might be less expensive to operate than the heat pump, and this could accommodate that. I also think about power outages. the power that you would need to run the backup boiler in comparison to the power needed to run the heat pump, you could run the backup boiler on a very small portable generator. So there's definitely advantages to that dual fuel approach, and certainly in retrofits, many times you're going to have a boiler that's already installed. The heat pump comes into the picture. The intent is to make the heat pump the primary heat source, but retaining that existing boiler and making it as simple as just piping it to the back of the unit is, it makes it very easy in the field for the contractor.
Yeah. So looking at some of the questions here, Ryan asked that the set point on the DHW was showing 135, and he asked how high does the heat pump take it before backup takes over. The backup, so we allow you to set the screen up for 135 degrees. We will overshoot that. I mean, technically, we'll allow it to go up to 140. But the backup really isn't a function of water temperature as far as like overshooting a certain water temperature. It's whether or not the compressor is running at 100% and can't reach the desired temperature that is the target temperature that's being asked for in that moment. And so, in order for the backup, whether we're talking electric or a dual fuel system, in order for the backup to come on, the compressor would have to be at 100% capacity. Uh, and we're still not reaching our target temperature. And there's also a time component in there, which is adjustable by the user. And that timer would have to expire in that mode. So if we're in the space heating mode, or in the domestic hot water mode. We've ran for X number of minutes and we're still not reaching our target temperature. So then we're bringing on the backup. Now, true to form, just as we bring on the backup, we also will fold the backup off on the other side of that. In a lot of cases with heat pumps, sometimes they need a little boost and a lift to get up to the desired target water temperature. But then once they're there, they can sustain that temperature. And so then we will back off of the either the electric element or the boiler. So there's a lot of programming. Our software engineers have done a great job with integrating these backup, whether it be electric or dual fuel, and getting the most efficient possible operation out of those backup and still providing, the comfort required for the space. All right. I'm going to move on here and we're going to talk about my uplink and Epic controls. There was one question in here. I think it was Dathan asked about whether or not we could export information from that screen if it was open source. It is not an open source platform. Uh, you would have to use one of these ways that I'm about to show you. There are app versions as well as web interfaces, and I'm going to get into that and show it to you now. Um, this particular white box here, this is not on this particular heat pump. This is on several of our heat pumps, but this is just a Wi-Fi gateway essentially. And this particular product has it built in to the touch screen. So you won't see this actual white box on this particular heat pump, but I'm going to flip my screen over here and I'm going to go to, this is going to be the web interface that I'm going to show you, mainly just because all the same information is available on the app, but on the web interface, this is just larger format. And so hopefully you guys will be able to see this better. Now, this is one of the field test systems that we've had installed for a while. This is in the up in the Northeast. This is a dual fuel unit, and this is live and currently. I don't know if the system is running right at the moment, but we'll figure that out here in just a moment. So, going through this and showing you some of the things that you have available to you. After we select a system here, there is a dashboard. Uh, that you can have as a contractor or a distributor. You can have all of your systems in this dashboard. I've selected this particular system here, and this is kind of the home screen for this system. As I scroll down here, I can see that we have the system name. It says that yes, we are online and there are no active alarms at this moment, and the firmware is up to date. Moving down from that, we can see here we have operating information. This operating information is just a snapshot in time. And so I can drop down any one of these categories. And so, like this one right here, energy, we can see currently the system current is 10 amps. The system power is 1321 watts, and the voltage is 212 volts. Uh, but if I want to look at hydronic load, so yes, this heat pump is running right at the moment. We got a delta T of 5.3, got a flow rate of 7.7 GPM, load pumps at 74%, and we can see our load supply and return water and what our target temp is. So our supply water right now is 91.3. Our target supply is 91.4. So I'd say we're doing pretty good on target right there. Um, and so we have these drop downs for a whole lot of categories here. Of course, we can see what the loop temperatures are on the source side. We can look at refrigeration status, and just a tremendous amount of information is available here. But you can see here that we're running in a compressor envelope number 4, and we can see what the calculated RPM is and what the max and minimum speeds are. These will change based on which envelope condition that we're in. But it's going to give us things like discharge pressure and suction pressure and EXV step positions and all sorts of information here. We can actually see what the temp is on the inverter. Um, and just a tremendous amount of information is available here. But all of these are just a snapshot in time. So these on the web version, these values are not going to update live. You have to refresh your screen to update these values. On the app version, they do update in real time. There is a slight delay. It's about I don't know, 5 to 10 second delay from what's actually happening. But you can see here, here's our boiler signal and a TT mode because this is a dual fuel. And then, of course, we can actually look at what our settings are for DHW. So you can see here we're running pretty aggressive on the AUX heat, and we're in a luxury mode. Um, and our hot water set point is 128 degrees. Um, and then we can see what all of our indoor climate settings are. So there's a lot of information. I'll also show you system status really quick. So here we can, see exactly what the system's doing, what the compressor RPM is, uh, and a whole bunch of information. So that's all just kind of a snapshot in time. But as we run down on the left side here, this menu options over here, I can come in here and click on notifications. And if we had a lockout situation or an alarm, this is where it would show up. Currently, there are no notifications. If I go to the menu, system menu, this is where I can actually make changes to the system. So this has the ability to be settings changed remotely. And so we can come in here and look at things like indoor climate. And these are all the settings that I have available to me to make changes to. So I can set up these AUX heat delays, uh, whatever my cooling set point is, what my heat mode is. So here we actually have an outdoor air temperature sensor, but this is where you could change it to internet weather or put it in a fixed mode, or the modulating input. So this would be for like, cascading systems. And then we can select our heat curve and our minimum maximum temperatures for the heat call. And then, we have soft idle deadband and high heat set points. So a lot of information available here. And this is the domestic hot water settings. You can see here we have normal, economy, and luxury settings for the hot water. Um, Again, we can choose between priorities here. on hot water or space conditioning. Um, and then when it comes to our pump settings, we can actually change minimum and maximum speed on the load pump, as well as minimum maximum speed on the source pump, as well as the delta T's on each side, source and load. So, depending on, or I'm sorry, here we have the T for the heating mode and one for the cooling mode on the load side. And then we have delta T set point for the source side. At this point on this particular unit, they're all set at 5 degrees, but those are adjustable. So you can set this up and configure it for your project. And then because this is a dual fuel, we have the boiler settings. And so here we've got modulation enabled, so our TT mode. And then we have three different settings here. We can either send a 0 to 10 DC signal, a 2 to 10 DC, or we have this third setting here that is 32 to 212. And there are a couple of boiler manufacturers out there that utilize a fixed modulating scale that is 0 to 100 degrees Celsius. So that's why we've listed this as 32 to 212. Mainly this is Viessmann, but this is the setting that you would choose for that type of boiler. And then we have a back off coefficient here. And this essentially is, I wouldn't recommend messing with this setting, but what this is kind of fine tuning the boiler and how we back it off to maximize compressor operation and efficiency. So we want the compressor to do as much as it can and bring the boiler in when it needs it and only when it needs it. Obviously, it's more efficient to run the heat pump than it is the boiler. And then, we can go in here and look at faults, system. Um, this is going to give us our app versions and software versions. We can push new software updates from this platform here. Where this program gets really interesting and really useful is in the history section here. So we have the ability to graph things out and chart all sorts of different parameters. And so we can choose up to 10 different parameters. And here's all the different categories that you can look at. But just to make this really simple, I'm going to show load return water and supply water temperatures. And I'm just going to hit select. And it's going to chart these out. So you can see that this unit looks like we probably had a domestic hot water call, but the unit really hasn't run today. But if we go back here to a week view, there we go. So we'll see a whole bunch of, we actually had a cooling call. Uh, but you can see we've mainly been heating in here, and you can see these kind of larger filled in areas. This is when we had pretty cold temperature, and you can see a spike of a domestic hot water call in there. But when you see these kind of tapering off and tapering up, this is outdoor reset. So this is our target water temperature rising as it gets colder outside and then falling the next day when the sun's up. And then these high spikes in between are our domestic hot water calls. But from here, as you can see, as I move my mouse across here, you can see that it'll drop a vertical line and then give me a timestamp and show me the what the actual numeric value is for that moment. And if I wanted to highlight it on one section, you can actually highlight that, and then it will zoom us in that one area so we can see a little bit more granular detail. We also have the ability to change the way that our graph looks. So I can put my return water as kind of this shaded in area. I can do things like show data points. And I can also come in here for the view selected and I can export this data. If I choose export here, it will download this information in a file and it's going to show it kind of like I'm actually on an Apple device at the moment, but it's like an Excel spreadsheet, and you can see here that we have return water temp and supply water temp, and basically this is updating about every 3 to 5 seconds. And so you can go down to the timestamp of the area that you're interested in. And again, you can have up to 10 columns on here, depending on which metrics you want to check out and look at. So this history tool here becomes incredibly useful if you want to see exactly what the heat pump is doing over a given time period. You can also add new charts. So depending on what metrics you want to look at. And then we have options up here. We could do things like the system status here. I think, yeah, we'll just show the compressor speed real quick. But if I go to like a month view here, so we can see that the compressor has really only been over 5,500 a few times. Um, but you can also put in custom dates. So if you wanted to see, from this day to that day, what was actually going on or what your electrical usage was or that kind of stuff, you could graph all of that out with these charts and graphs here. So it's a really cool feature that allows you the ability to really get into granular detail. And the homeowner version of this does not have this level of detailed information. It's more of more of an energy monitoring type of thing. I mean, it certainly gives quite a bit of detail, but it's not quite this involved. So this is on the contractor or distributor view here that I'm looking at right now. Uh, John, in all your experience, having a tool like this that could actually show you all of this detail over a large time period, I'm sure would have been a lot easier to figure out some issues when it came to water flow or delta T's on certain zones and that things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the instrumentation that you would need to get this type of data, BTU meters, temperature sensors, data loggers. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of equipment to get this. So, I've not seen all this detail before, Justin. I'm amazed at how flexible, especially that graphing, to go in there and really diagnose what's going on with that heat pump.
Yeah. I'm just going to overlay the source temps at the same time. Um, so yeah, it's pretty interesting, and this is such a good diagnostic tool because you can look at things like what was my call at a given moment, or what was the heat pump, what was the heat pump being told to do when this is actually going on, and figure out whether we have a zone control issue or whether we actually have something going on with the actual heat pump. For contractors, you can narrow this down and know exactly what the issue is, or that there's not an issue, before you even send a truck out there. So it becomes just a really, really phenomenal diagnostic tool for sure. So, and then we can do things like update software versions. If there was a software update for this, it would give you the option to push that update from here. And then, of course, we have things like customer information uh, and stuff like that. Real quick here, I'll show you the uh, dashboard here. So this is kind of like a field test dashboard that I have going on here, but you can see it shows up as dots around the map on where these systems are installed. If I click on one of these, it's going to show me that system. Um, and you can see here I've got 21 connected, 7 are offline, 14 are online. I've got 0 systems with an alarm currently. I've got 4 systems that have a firmware update available. If I click on this and then I scroll down to my list view, it's going to show me the 4 units that have updates available. And same thing, if I have one with the notification, it's going to show that down here as well. And then with systems that are working properly, um, you can see the list that as that shows up down here. So this is just kind of like a quick overview. Any systems that had a problem, it would move those to the top of the list and they would show up here with systems with alarms. Um, so it's kind of a notification center. This app has the ability to send push notifications to the contractor as well as to the homeowner, and say, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson's heat pump alarmed for whatever the reason, and give you a numeric code and a brief description of what the alarm was. And then you can go in there, look at it, figure out exactly what was going on with that heat pump at that point in time. So we feel like that this is a really, fantastic diagnostic tool, a really awesome tool for contractors, that gives you a lot of flexibility to really get the the data that's required to really kind of handle any situation. Got quite a few more questions here. So just real quick, I just opened it up. I'm just gonna read the first one that I read here. Dirk asks, "Tell me about prioritizing DHW versus space heating." Generally speaking, we do put domestic hot water as the priority. Just depends on the situation, but that's the most common situation. Um, and as you can see here, I'm going to go back to the system that I was on. This is the question that comes up quite often, and people are concerned about how much, like the house is going to be ignored or something, when it comes to the unit ignoring the house during domestic hot water. And uh, we'll just look at it for a month. Actually, that's too much data on the screen. We'll do the week. Um, so you can see here that the hot water calls, where you see let me do this. Okay. So where you see this, you can see this hot water call and that it happened relatively quickly, and then we just have this tapering down stair stepped. This means that the unit wasn't running, and this is just the water and cooling off, just via standing losses, that's in the heat exchanger and in the pipes. Um, but you can see on what kind of intervals that we had hot water calls, where we see this kind of thick line. This is where the unit was heating the space. So we were going along heating the space. We got a domestic hot water call, and then that call ended, and then we went back to heating the space again. You can see that these hot water calls are very, very brief in time. So um, let me zoom in on that section a little bit more. Um, so from the time that we got the hot water call, say right there, call it 2350. The hot water call was over by 58, 59, call it. So 8 or 9 minutes that the unit ran in domestic hot water. That's not enough time for you to see any sort of issues or you know problems with the space cooling down, if that makes sense. You got anything that you want to add about that, John?
Well, I know one of the questions that came in, what do you do with a very large domestic hot water load? Let's say we've got a very large, master bathroom shower, and that the load is actually larger than the space heating load. Um, if you're going to address a load like that, you'd have to have the capacity to do it first of all. So either
For
a
sure.
dual fuel with the boiler running, or the electric unit with the electric elements running, or possibly even multiple units depending on what that demand was. But is there ever a situation where you could go into a prolonged domestic hot water call, uh, and not come back into space heating? Let's say a failure, it could be literally a leak. You're just running water through the tank. You can't really satisfy that domestic water call. Does the firmware have some type of an override after 30 minutes, 60 minutes, something like that?
It does not currently. Um, this is the same strategy that we've been using since 2017. So we've got the sample size at this point is quite large between our variable speed water to water and our air to water product that's existing. Uh, it's never been an issue that we've ever had any sort of such a large or long-term domestic hot water call that it created a big issue. Um, Most people are concerned about this in the cooling season, and everything's relative. Like you said, I mean, could you have a situation or a job that required way more horsepower than one of these units?
Mhm.
Real quick, uh, Dirk asked what sizes are available. The unit that we're talking about here is an 060, rated at 5 tons of heating capacity plus doing domestic hot water. Um, and that's the only size that we have available at this point in time. Um, but you could require multiple of these, or multiple depending on the backup boiler. Obviously there's a
Mhm.
limit to everything, and domestic hot water, uh, depending on what your requirements are. I mean, domestic can require significant amounts of horsepower if you get carried away, you know?
It can, and, we ran into this quite a bit with boiler systems as well, where the domestic water load potentially could be 3 times what the design space heating load was. So, and in a case like that, we had to size the boilers to handle that domestic hot water load. Typically, these are in very high-end houses. I remember one project where the shower actually required a 3-inch drain rather than a 6-inch drain. So, I refer to
Yeah,
these human car wash showers, but, if that's what your client wants, you've gotta build the capacity, and whether it's a boiler or whether it's the WV heat pump, you're very likely going into multiple units. And,
absolutely.
if you're controlling those with, some kind of an external control, an HBX or a Tecmar, that could have some type of setting where you might have a priority, and you might have some kind of a priority override function.
Yeah,
But yeah, you use the term horsepower. It really does come down to that. I mean, we've literally seen residential projects where domestic water demand is over 500,000 BTUs per hour, and if you ask a client like that, "Well, how long do you wanna sustain that?" And they'll say, "As long as I want the faucet on." They don't want to run out regardless. They don't want time limits. So, it's a good sales opportunity to build a nice, multi heat pump system.
yeah, exactly. So real quick, I'm going to hit a couple more questions that we have here. Galen asked, "Can the homeowner see or do the software updates?" And yes, they can. So from the app or from the web interface, the homeowner, and that's the way we would prefer it happen. Honestly, is that the homeowner does that, but it is available to do it from both versions, the My Uplink or My Uplink Pro. Uh, Jeff asked if you have to manually activate firmware updates. Uh, yes, you do. So it will notify you that the firmware update exists. Let me go back to select a system real quick. And I'm just going to go to these that are showing that we need a firmware update. Um, uh, yeah, we'll just grab one of these real quick. Uh, So here we can see this is an air to water system, and we can see that the firmware version is out of date and an update is available. So you could click on these, but ideally, someone would be there with the heat pump. I mean, you can do it remotely, but in it, my recommendation would be that we would rather have the homeowner do this, and they will get the same notifications. And it'll notify them and put these little exclamation points saying that there is new firmware available for your device. Um, so Sean asked, can we pair this with a straight water to water to meet your requirements? And the answer to that question is absolutely. So depending on what the requirements are for the job, you can absolutely pair this unit up with multiple. Um, there we go. Um, Multiple different styles of heat pumps, as long as the upper end water temperature did not exceed what the max water temperature was for that other unit. That would be my only concern. But we have several systems where we have a variable speed water to water sitting right next to a 3, 4, 5 ton, 6 ton, single or two stage water to water unit. So depending on what your requirements are, there's absolutely options. I'm about running out of time here, and I kind of knew this would happen because that I could go on for a long time about this unit. I did want to show real quick here. This is just kind of a standard piping diagram. So on here we can see that there's a couple radiant zones. There's a hydronic air handler right here. This is just showing the common port layout. This would be for the electric backup. But this would be the direct to load piping concept, which is in the IOM manual for the current Rev A WV that we have on our websites. There will be a new IOM manual coming soon for this new variation, new version. But these piping diagrams will still be relevant because the same strategies will be employed with this new unit. So direct to load, we want to take up as little amount of floor and wall space as possible in these mechanical rooms. Going back to the pictures that I showed earlier, having really nice, clean installs, it just kind of changes the game for hydronic heat pumps. And you really don't need a massive mechanical room, which most of you on here, I'm sure, already know that you never get a mechanical room the size that you want it to be anyway. But, uh, you know, before requiring multiple heat pumps and, if you were doing hot tank, cold tank setups and multiple buffer tanks, and if you're doing dual fuel backup and you require a lot of real estate real quickly, just to get all that stuff shoehorned in. And this offers a whole lot of flexibility and makes everyone's life a lot easier, um, and lets new technology work for you. With all that being said, we're up against our time limit here. um, I had this slide in there. I know I didn't get to all the questions. I apologize about that, but we will get written responses to a lot of those. But I will turn this over to Kevin and John, and they can talk about what's next.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Justin. That is that's an amazing, and look forward to seeing that out in the field more. Um, for April, we're going to be talking about issues to avoid with hydronic heat pumps, and that would cover both air to water heat pumps and water to water heat pumps. What are some of the common problems that we see out in the field, especially given that hydronic heat pumps are relatively new compared to boilers, in the hydronics industry. So one of the things I found over the years is oftentimes talking with installers, you really get people to pay attention when you show them errors, explain what's the background behind the error, and then show that either how to avoid that error in the design phase or how to correct it if it's already been installed. So that'll be coming up, guess, is that tax day, April 15th? So
Yep.
hopefully you'll register and we'll get into it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one, John. That one will be fun.
It will be fun. It's we decided, April's April Fool's Day as well as tax day, so we'll have some fun with it. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, John. Last call for any questions. We're gonna make Justin sit down and answer all these questions. Last chance to get any in there, but it's gonna do it for us today. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to sit tight for just a moment to fill out the survey. As John previewed, we'll be back next month on April 15th. So be sure to pass along the registration link to your friends, family, and colleagues. You'll be receiving a link, the recording, the slides, a PDF of all the Q&A questions as mentioned in your email in the next coming days. Otherwise, that's going to do it for us today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next month.